I never thought paper could feel like a punch to the ribs. But when I opened the envelope and read my son's words, 6 of them, neat and cruel, I couldn't breathe. Dad, don't come to the reunion. That was it. No greeting. No explanation. Just a sentence signed with his name like a business transaction. And I, like a fool, sat in my kitchen with that note in my hand for almost an hour before writing back just one word. Noted. You'd think after 72 years of living and 38 years of raising that boy, I would have earned more than that. But life doesn't owe you cents, and neither does your blood. I folded the note back into its envelope, sealing it again with trembling fingers. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The tears had all dried up years ago, somewhere between losing my wife and watching my son's heart harden like wet cement. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that grows teeth and gnaws at your memories. I stood up, the wooden chair groaning like it too had had enough, and shuffled toward the window. The oak tree outside still stood strong, older than me, its branches trembling in the wind. My wife used to sit beneath it every summer with a book in hand, and our son asleep in her lap. That tree knew everything. It had witnessed more love and loss than any diary ever could. I leaned against the frame and whispered to no one. So that's how it ends, huh? But it didn't start that way. Not even close. I was a good father. Not perfect, no, but I gave everything I had. When Eleanor died when cancer swallowed her in less than 6 months, I didn't just lose my wife. I lost the bridge between me and my son. She was the warm light that made our home feel like a hearth. Without her, all I had were burnt-out coals and a boy too angry to grieve. He was 15 then, old enough to understand death, too young to carry it. I tried to talk to him. He'd slam his door. I cooked for him. He skipped meals. I hugged him. He stood stiff as wood. I told myself he'd come around. That pain makes us strangers to each other sometimes. I believed, deep down, that the man he'd grow into would one day say, "Dad, I'm sorry I shut you out." But years passed. He graduated high school without inviting me, got into a university 3 states away without telling me, sent me a graduation photo 5 weeks after the fact with a post-it, in case you wanted one. And then, silence. He never blocked me, just ignored me. A ghost with my last name. Still, every Christmas I sent him a card. Every birthday, a book I thought he'd like. Every Father's Day, I told myself not to expect a call, but I left the ringer on anyway. And now this letter. A reunion. A celebration. And an order. Don't come. 2 days passed. I didn't leave the house. I watched the same clock tick through the same minutes like it had better places to be. On the 3rd morning, I walked to the small cafe down the street just to hear another human voice, even if it was just ordering a coffee. "Morning, Mr. Clayton," said Sarah, the barista with freckles and too much kindness in her eyes. "Usual?" I nodded. "Make it to go." She slid the cup across the counter. "Everything okay?" I hesitated. "Ever get a letter that breaks your heart?" She blinked. "Yeah, once. From my dad." I smiled bitterly. Mine was from my son. She didn't ask more. Just placed her hand gently on top of mine and said, "Whatever it says, you're still here. That counts." I walked out with tears I didn't show. Maybe her kindness hurt more than my son's cruelty, because it reminded me I was still capable of feeling. That night, I sat by the fireplace long cold and took out the photo albums. Page by page, I saw the boy he used to be, riding on my shoulders, covered in spaghetti sauce, hugging his mom with a gap-toothed smile. I don't know when he started resenting me. Maybe it wasn't one thing. Maybe it was everything. My stubborn rules. My long hours at the factory. My silence after Eleanor died when I should have screamed with him. Grief makes cowards of some and monsters of others. I think I became both. The next morning, I opened the junk drawer where I'd tossed all the returned mail over the years and counted. 12 letters. 8 birthday cards. 5 Christmas ones. All unopened. I stared at the pile for a long time before deciding something. I wasn't going to the reunion, but I wasn't going to disappear either. I bought a journal. Not a fancy one, just leather-bound, thick pages, no lines. And I started writing. Each morning with my coffee, I wrote a letter to him. Not to send, just to say what needed saying. "Dear Matthew, you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm sorry I didn't know how to say that when it counted. Dear Matthew, I wasn't ready to lose your mother, but I should have been ready to hold you closer when we lost her. Dear Matthew, even when you hated me, I still loved you. That never changed. It never will. I wrote one every day for 3 weeks. Then one day, Sarah asked me if I was doing anything for Thanksgiving. I said, just me and the ghosts. She invited me to her family dinner. I said no, but she insisted. That evening, I sat at a table with strangers who smiled like I wasn't one. They asked me about my life, my stories, my opinions. No one knew my son's name, and for once, I didn't feel invisible. After dinner, her uncle handed me a slice of pie and said, "You remind me of my dad. Stubborn, but big-hearted." I almost broke down, because for a moment, I believed it. A week later, I received a letter. Different handwriting. Return address, Emily Carson, Matthew's wife. I opened it with hands that shook like the past was crawling back through the seams. Mr. Clayton, I hope you're well. I'm writing because I found a letter Matthew wrote and didn't send. It was addressed to you. I don't know why he never mailed it, but I think you deserve to read it. It was folded neatly inside. I took a breath and read. Dad, I don't know if I'll ever send this. I don't know if I have the right. But here it is. I hated you for letting Mom die. I know it wasn't your fault. But when she got sick, you shut down. You became this stone I couldn't reach. And I needed a dad more than ever. I thought you didn't care. That you loved her more than me. That once she was gone, you were done trying. So I pulled away. I told myself you didn't want me around. I kept that story alive for years because it hurt less than the truth that I missed you. When the reunion came up, I panicked. I knew if I saw you, I'd fall apart. I didn't want to cry in front of my kids. I didn't want them to see me forgive you. Or worse, ask why I waited so long. I'm not ready. But I want to be. Matthew. I dropped the letter. My heart thundered like it wanted to scream. He missed me. He wanted to come back. He just didn't know how. And maybe, I realized, neither did I. I didn't sleep that night. The words kept spinning in my head like wind through an open barn door. I'm not ready. But I want to be. It was the first sliver of hope in years. And it didn't come in the form of an apology or a phone call. It came wrapped in regret and buried under years of silence. But it was real. The next morning, I sat down with the journal I'd been writing and tore out every page. Not to throw away, but to mail. Every single letter I had written to him, I folded carefully and placed in a large envelope. I didn't add a note. I didn't explain. I figured my words already said enough. At the post office, the clerk eyed the bulky envelope and said, "Family?" I nodded. Yes, hopefully still. She smiled softly. Then send it with faith. I did. 3 days passed. No word. Then 5. Then 8. I told myself not to wait by the phone, but I did anyway. Every morning after pouring coffee, I'd sit by the window, staring out at nothing, fingers tapping the table, ears tuned to the silence. It was day 10 when something changed. I stepped outside to water the plants, a habit I'd picked up again just to feel needed by something. There, sitting on the porch, was a small, square box. No note, no name, just my address scribbled in pen. I took it inside and opened it slowly, like whatever was inside might shatter. Inside was a photograph. It was a framed picture of Matthew, as a boy maybe 10 years old, sitting on my lap. We were at the zoo, I remembered. A giraffe was behind us. His smile was wide, tooth missing in front. And I looked alive. Underneath the frame was a yellow sticky note. I remember this day. You packed lunch. We got lost on the way home. You never got mad. You just laughed. I miss that, Dad. No signature. But I didn't need one. My hands trembled as I placed the photo on the mantel. My heart beat like it had heard its name for the first time in years. He remembered. He missed me. That afternoon, I walked down to the cafe. Sarah noticed the change in my walk, the lightness in my shoulders. She raised an eyebrow. Good news. I simply smiled and nodded. You're glowing, Mr. Clayton. Feels strange, I said. Like remembering how to be warm. She brought me a slice of pecan pie on the house. You're gonna need energy, she winked. Sounds like your life's about to change. That night, I sat at the desk and pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. No more journal entries. This was real. Dear Matthew, thank you for the picture. I had forgotten that moment, but seeing it brought it all back. I remember the peanut butter sandwiches and the way you asked if giraffes could yawn. I remember you holding my hand the entire walk back to the car. You were always curious. And I never said it enough, but I loved every second of being your dad. I still do. If you're ready to talk, I'm here. If not yet, I'll keep waiting. I've gotten good at it. Love. Dad. 2 days later, my phone rang. I froze. It had been so long since I heard his ringtone, I'd forgotten what it sounded like. But there it was, gentle piano keys, the default one I'd never changed. I answered on the second ring. Hello. Silence. Then a breath. Hi, Dad. I didn't know how to respond. The sound of his voice hit me like thunder in a drought. Hey, Matthew. Another pause. Then, I got the letters. I got the picture. We both chuckled softly, awkwardly, like two people trying to remember how to be family. I didn't know what to say when I read them, he admitted. But I read every word. Me too, I said. Yours. He was quiet again. Then, I'm sorry I wrote that letter. About the reunion. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was scared. I know, I said gently. Me too. More silence. But not cold. Not anymore. Emily said she's proud of me for calling, he said, trying to laugh but choking on it. I'm proud of you too. And just like that, years of frost began to melt. We didn't solve everything in that call. You can't unbreak years of silence in a single conversation. But it was a beginning. A fragile, flickering beginning. He told me about his kids, me grandkids. Lily was 10. Ben was 7. I had missed their births, their first steps, their birthdays. But I hadn't missed everything. There was still time. They know about you, he said. Not much. But Emily's told them stories. I'd like to meet them, I said carefully. I'd like that too. We agreed to talk again in a week. When I hung up, I stared at the phone in disbelief. My house, once a tomb of echoes, now held his voice. The walls felt warmer, the air softer. A few days later, an envelope arrived. Inside were drawings, crayon scribbles, clumsy stick figures, messy hearts. One said, Hi, Grandpa. My name is Lily. I like dogs and marshmallows. The other said, Hi, Grandpa. I have a robot. He is blue. Love, Ben. I stared at those crooked letters with tears streaming down my face. I whispered their names aloud like a prayer. That evening, I went out and bought 2 frames. The next morning, I walked into the cafe, held the drawings up for Sarah to see, and beamed. I have grandkids, I said. She clapped and nearly cried. The next call with Matthew lasted longer. He told me he and Emily had been arguing about whether to move closer to her job. I listened, not as someone with solutions, but just a father who finally had a seat back at the table. He asked about my garden. I told him the tomatoes were rebellious and the cucumbers had taken over the fence. We laughed like people who used to laugh often. At the end of the call, he said, Dad, would you want to come visit sometime next month? The kids want to meet you. I froze. A year ago, I would have given anything to hear those words. Now they were real. I'd like that, I said. Very much. I spent the next few weeks preparing. I got a haircut, bought a new shirt, practiced how to introduce myself to a 10-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy without sounding ancient or afraid. I even asked Sarah what kind of toys kids like these days. Slime, she said, and anything that makes noise. Got it. Slime and noise, I muttered. What could go wrong? She grinned. You're going to be great. The night before my trip, I sat by the window and looked at the old oak tree. It had seen so much first steps, last goodbyes, and everything in between. I raised a glass of tea and whispered, Wish me luck. The wind stirred gently, like the tree nodded back. When the train pulled into their town, my palms were sweating. I stepped onto the platform, suitcase in hand, heart in my throat. Then I saw them. Matthew stood by the bench, Emily beside him, holding Ben's hand. Lily spotted me first. She tugged at her dad's sleeve and pointed. Matthew looked up. Our eyes met. He smiled. Not the forced, polite smile I'd grown used to seeing in pictures, but a real one. The kind I hadn't seen since he was a boy. He stepped forward. Hi, Dad. Hi, son. Lily ran up to me. Are you really Grandpa? I knelt, tears already forming. I really am. Their home was warm, not just from the soft autumn sunlight filtering through the windows, but from something deeper, something I hadn't felt in years. It was in the way Emily took my coat and said, Welcome, with sincerity. It was in the way Ben clung to my leg and said, You're taller than I thought, before scampering off to show me his blue robot. And it was in the way Matthew lingered at the door after we walked in, his eyes scanning my face like he still didn't believe I was real. You okay, Dad? He asked. I nodded. Just taking it in. He gave a small smile. Me too. We had lunch in the backyard. Emily made sandwiches. The kids ran circles around the lawn, giggling, chasing each other with plastic swords. I watched them, heart full, chest tight. Do they know? I asked quietly. Matthew followed my gaze. That we lost time? A little, but not the details. I nodded. That's okay. They don't need to carry it. He looked at me, something flickering behind his eyes. I'm trying not to, either. I glanced at him. You don't have to forget it. Just don't let it decide everything. He exhaled slowly. That's what I'm learning. Then Ben came charging toward me, sword raised high. Grandpa, you're on my team. I picked up a pool noodle from the grass and stood, smiling. Well then, lead the way, Captain. Later that evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Matthew and I sat on the porch with 2 mugs of tea. The air was crisp, stars just beginning to scatter across the sky. He rocked slowly in the chair next to me. I don't remember the last time we sat like this, he said. Your mom's funeral? I replied. He looked down. Yeah. Silence settled between us, but it wasn't the kind that bruises. It was tired, gentle, the kind that says, we made it. I blamed you for so long, he finally said. Not because you did something wrong, but because you were the only one left. I know. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to forgive you or myself. I didn't know how to help you, I said. I thought giving you space would heal something. He shook his head. It just made the silence louder. We sat there for a while, neither of us looking at the other, both looking at the sky. I'm sorry I shut you out, he whispered. I'm sorry I let you. He turned his head toward me then. Can we keep trying? I reached over and squeezed his hand. I never stopped. Over the next few days, something beautiful happened. The kids started calling me Grandpa like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ben insisted I read to him every night even when I fumbled through the voices. Lily taught me how to use her tablet, though I still called it the glowing book. Emily baked an apple pie and claimed it wasn't very good, but I had 2 slices just to prove her wrong. And Matthew? He was softer, still cautious, still carrying years he hadn't spoken out loud. But there was a lightness to him now, a willingness to let me in. We went to the park one morning, just the 2 of us, and watched the kids climb the jungle gym. You ever think Mom would have believed we'd end up here? He asked. I laughed. She believed in miracles. So yeah. He smiled. She would have loved Emily. She would have adored her. We sat in silence again, a new kind this time. Not heavy, not aching, just comfortable. Then he asked, why didn't you remarry? I took a breath. Because no one could make coffee the way she did. He looked at me like he understood everything in that sentence. On the last night of my visit, we had a small fire pit in the backyard. The kids roasted marshmallows, though Ben mostly just set his on fire for fun. Emily told stories from her childhood. I watched from my chair, wrapped in a blanket, letting the sounds of their laughter soak into my bones. It felt like belonging. It felt like home. After the kids went to bed, and Emily excused herself to clean up inside, Matthew stayed with me by the fire. Dad, yeah, there's something I need to ask. I looked over. He wasn't smiling. His face was serious, eyes fixed on the flame. Why did you never stop writing to me? I blinked. Because I never stopped being your father. He nodded slowly. Even when I didn't respond? Especially then. He took a deep breath. I'm sorry. For all of it. You already said that. I said softly. I know. I want to say it again. He looked at me, and there was something wet in his eyes. I love you, Dad. My throat tightened. I love you too, son. Always have. The next morning, when it was time to leave, Lily gave me a bracelet she made out of rubber bands. So you don't forget me, she said. Ben drew me a picture of the 2 of us fighting dragons together. Emily packed me a sandwich for the train and kissed my cheek. And Matthew? He hugged me. Tight. With both arms. I'll call you this weekend, he said. I'll be waiting. The train ride home felt different than the one there. Lighter. Brighter. Like I was carrying something precious that couldn't be seen, something mended. When I arrived, the oak tree outside my house greeted me with rustling leaves. I touched its bark and whispered, we made it. Inside, the house didn't feel so empty anymore. I placed the kids' drawings on the fridge, Lily's bracelet on the shelf, Ben's blue robot doodle on my nightstand, and the photo of me and Matthew at the zoo, that stayed on the mantel, front and center. That evening, I wrote a new letter. Not in the journal, just a piece of paper, folded once. Dear Eleanor, I wish you could have seen them. He's doing better. So am I. Thank you for teaching us how to love even when it was hard. I miss you. Love, Thomas. The next few days back at home felt different, not in a grand, cinematic way, but in the small, sacred ways life changes when a wound begins to close. The silence in the house was no longer oppressive. It was calm, thoughtful, almost companionable. The stillness wasn't a reminder of who I'd lost anymore, but a space that held what I'd regained. I went to the market on Monday morning. Bought 2 jars of strawberry jam because Lily said it was her favorite. The cashier, an old friend named Hank, whistled as he scanned my groceries. "Special occasion?" he asked. I hesitated. Then I smiled. "You could say that. I'm stocking up for the next visit." His eyebrows lifted. "Family?" I nodded. "Yeah, my son and his kids." Hank paused. "Well, I'll be damned. I thought I'd never hear you say those words in the same sentence again." "Neither did I said. "But here we are." That night, Matthew called again. We talked for over an hour. Nothing heavy, just little things. "I fixed the fence finally," he said. "Only took me 2 years. I would have helped." "I know. I think that's why I put it off." We laughed. Lily jumped in halfway through the call to show me a glittery crown she made for her school play. Ben made fart noises into the phone and ran away laughing. Emily popped in at the end to say, "We miss you already." I hung up smiling so wide my face ached. The next morning, I went into the attic. It was time. Boxes had been gathering dust for over a decade. Photos, trinkets, old clothes Eleanor had folded neatly before she passed. I ran my hand over the fabric of her favorite sweater. It still smelled faintly like lavender. I found an old cassette player. Inside was a tape labeled Matthew age 6. I set it in, held my breath, and hit play. Crackles. Then a high-pitched voice. "Hi, Mommy. Hi, Daddy. I'm a dinosaur now. Roar." I laughed out loud, the sound echoing off the wood beams like a secret I'd just remembered. Then, "I love you, even when I'm bad." My eyes welled. That tape became the most sacred thing I owned. Later that afternoon, I went to the cemetery. I hadn't been in nearly a year. I brought flowers, yellow tulips. Her favorite hand sat beside Eleanor's grave, just talking. "I saw him," I said. "I saw our boy." The breeze stirred gently. "He's a good father, El. And Emily's wonderful. She reminds me of you, sharp, patient, with a laugh that fills the room." I took a deep breath. "He told me he loves me." Silence. "He forgave me." More silence. But it felt full. I rested my hand on the headstone. I didn't do everything right. But I kept trying. I kept writing. "You were right, it was worth it." I stayed for hours, watching the light shift through the trees. Before I left, I whispered, "You'd be proud." And I believed that. That weekend, they visited me. Not just Matthew, all of them. The sound of little feet pounding up my porch steps made me laugh like I hadn't in years. Lily ran into my arms, nearly knocking me over. Ben followed close behind with a stuffed animal he insisted had to see Grandpa's house first. Matthew and Emily brought groceries and a casserole. "You really didn't have to do all this," I said. Emily grinned. "That's what families do, right?" We played board games, walked to the park, and planted a small flower garden together. I showed the kids the oak tree. "Grandma used to sit right there with your daddy," I said, pointing to the base of the trunk. She'd read to him. Sometimes, she'd read to the squirrels, too. Lily giggled. Ben asked if squirrels could learn English. Matthew watched me with a softness in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was little. That evening, after the kids were in bed, he and I sat on the porch again. "Do you remember the night Mom died?" he asked quietly. I turned to him, surprised by the directness. "I remember everything about it," I said. "Even the way the nurse didn't know where to put her hands." Matthew looked down. "I hated you that night." "I know. I wanted you to scream or cry or throw something. But you just stood there, like you weren't even there." I nodded, heart heavy. I froze. I wanted to say something, do something, but it felt like if I moved, she'd really be gone. He swallowed. "I thought you didn't care." "I cared too much," I said. "That was the problem. My grief wasn't loud. It was buried, and I didn't realize that made me invisible to you." He looked at me. "That night I needed you." I reached out and held his shoulder. "I know. I wish I could go back. I'd hold you so tight you couldn't breathe." He gave a broken laugh. "I would have hated that. But maybe you'd have known I was still there." He nodded slowly. "I know it now." The next morning, before they left, Matthew handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked. He smiled. "Open it." Inside was a photo of me with the kids, taken in the backyard the day before. Lily sat on my lap, Ben next to me with a toy robot in hand. My smile stretched from ear to ear. On the back was written, "To Grandpa our knight, our gardener, our friend." Below that, in Matthew's handwriting, "Let's make this a tradition." I looked up. "Every year?" I asked. He nodded. "And not just holidays." I choked up. "I'd like that." That night, I sat down to write one final letter in the journal, the same one I thought I'd never open again. But this one was different. "Dear Matthew, you came back to me. That's all I ever wanted. Not perfection, not apologies, just the sound of your voice, the feel of your hand in mine, the chance to sit beside you and know that somehow, after everything, we were still father and son. Thank you for finding your way home. I'll never take it for granted. Love, Dad." Their home was warm, not just from the soft autumn sunlight filtering through the windows, but from something deeper, something I hadn't felt in years. It was in the way Emily took my coat and said, "Welcome," with sincerity. It was in the way Ben clung to my leg and said, "You're taller than I thought," before scampering off to show me his blue robot. And it was in the way Matthew lingered at the door after we walked in, his eyes scanning my face like he still didn't believe I was real. "You okay, Dad?" he asked. I nodded. "Just taking it in." He gave a small smile. "Me too." We had lunch in the backyard. Emily made sandwiches. The kids ran circles around the lawn, giggling, chasing each other with plastic swords. I watched them, heart full, chest tight. "Do they know?" I asked quietly. Matthew followed my gaze. "That we lost time?" "A little, but not the details." I nodded. "That's okay. They don't need to carry it." He looked at me, something flickering behind his eyes. "I'm trying not to, either. I didn't do everything right," I said, "but I never stopped being your father." He looked down. "That's the part one forgot." That night, after the kids went to bed, Matthew and I sat on the porch with mugs of tea. The air was crisp. He rocked slowly in the chair next to me. "I don't remember the last time we sat like this," he said. "Your mom's funeral?" I replied. "Yeah." Silence settled between us, but it wasn't the kind that bruises. It was tired, gentle, the kind that says, "We made it." "I blamed you for so long," he said. "Not because you did something wrong, but because you were the only one left." "I know. I didn't know how to forgive you or myself. I didn't know how to help you," I said. "I thought giving you space would heal something." He shook his head. It just made the silence louder. We sat for a while, both looking at the sky. "I'm sorry I shut you out," he whispered. "I'm sorry I let you." He turned toward me. "Can we keep trying?" I reached over and squeezed his hand. I never stopped. Over the next few days, something beautiful happened. The kids called me Grandpa like it had always been that way. Ben insisted I read to him every night, even when I fumbled the voices. Lily showed me how to use her tablet, though I still called it the glowing book. Emily baked a pie. She claimed it wasn't very good. I had 2 slices anyway. And Matthew? He was softer, still cautious, still carrying years he hadn't spoken aloud. But there was lightness in him now, a willingness to let me in. One morning we took a walk through the park, just the 2 of us. "You ever think Mom would have believed we'd end up here?" he asked. I laughed. She believed in miracles. She would have loved Emily. She'd have adored her. We walked in silence for a while. "Why didn't you ever remarry?" he asked. I took a breath. "Because no one could make coffee like she did." He chuckled. "That's your standard?" "She was the only home I ever knew." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." The last night of my visit, we lit a fire in the backyard. The kids roasted marshmallows, Ben burning his and declaring it perfect. Lily sang a silly song from school. Emily told stories from her childhood. I sat there, wrapped in a blanket, letting the sound of their laughter soak into my bones. It felt like belonging. It felt like a new life waking up. After the kids went to bed, Matthew stayed with me by the fire. "There's something I need to ask," he said. "Go ahead. Why did you never stop writing to me?" I blinked. "Because I never stopped being your father. Even when I didn't respond. Especially then." He was quiet a long time. "I love you, Dad." My throat tightened. "I love you too, son. Always have." The next morning, when it was time to leave, Lily gave me a bracelet she made out of rubber bands. "So you don't forget me," she said. Ben gave me a drawing and him fighting dragons together. His robot watched from the corner. Emily packed me a sandwich for the train. Matthew hugged me tight. "I'll call you this weekend." I'll be waiting. The train ride home felt different, lighter, brighter. When I arrived, the oak tree outside greeted me with a gentle rustle. I placed the kids' drawings on the fridge, Lily's bracelet on the shelf, the photo of me and Matthew at the zoo front and center on the mantel. That night, I climbed into the attic for the first time in years. I found an old tape labeled Matthew age 6. I popped it into the dusty cassette player. Crackles. Then a high-pitched voice. Hi, Mommy. Hi, Daddy. I'm a dinosaur now. Roar. I laughed. A real, deep laugh. Then he whispered, I love you, even when I'm bad. My eyes stung with tears. Later, I walked to the cemetery and sat beside Eleanor's grave. I brought her yellow tulips. I saw him, I said. Our boy came home. The breeze stirred the grass. He forgave me. More silence. But it felt full. I wish you could have seen the kids. Lily's got your eyes. Ben's got your sass. I sat for a long time. Before I left, I whispered, you'd be proud. That weekend, they came to visit me. All of them. I cooked dinner. Well, I tried. Emily rescued the lasagna. The kids played with the old toy box I hadn't touched in years. Matthew fixed the squeaky door in the hallway. We planted flowers together outside. That night, Matthew handed me a photo of me with the kids. On the back, to Grandpa our knight, our gardener, our friend. And under that, in Matthew's handwriting, let's make this a tradition. I stared at it for a long time, then nodded. Every year, every month, he said, if we can. That night, I wrote one final letter. Not to Matthew, not to Eleanor, to myself. Dear Thomas, you waited, you endured, you loved in silence, you hoped when it hurt, you forgave even when you weren't asked. And now, you have it back, family, laughter, purpose. It was worth it. Now go make the most of what's left. You've got a lot of life to live. Love. Me. Spring arrived gently that year. It crept in with the scent of wild flowers, warmed the soil under my fingers, and softened the air I breathed. For the first time in a long time, I was not alone when it came. Matthew and his family started visiting twice a month, just like he said. Sometimes it was just the kids and Emily. Sometimes they all came. Each time, I felt more like a grandfather, more like a father, more like myself again. I taught Ben how to ride a bike in my backyard. He fell once, cried hard, then got up and tried again. When he finally made it all the way down the sidewalk, he shouted, I did it, Grandpa. I really did it. I cheered louder than I had in decades. Lily brought me little stories she'd written, stapled together like books. One was about a cat who learned to dance because her grandpa believed in her. She named the cat Thomas. I didn't ask if it was coincidence. I just hugged her and asked for a signed copy. They filled my house with noise, clutter, and love. Toys on the floor, crayon drawings on the fridge, muddy shoes by the door. I used to think I liked the quiet. Turns out I was just used to it. One Sunday, as we planted tomatoes in my garden, Matthew turned to me with a strange look. Dad, he said, do you remember when you told me about your father? I nodded. I told you he didn't know how to love out loud. He dug his hands into the soil, brows furrowed. Do you think I was becoming him? No, I said softly. I think you were scared of becoming me. He looked at me, eyes wide. And now you've built something better than either of us ever had. You broke the pattern. He blinked fast and sniffed once. I'm trying. You're doing, I said, every time you show up. He smiled, small and honest. I think Mom would be proud. She is, I said. I know it. That summer, I started hosting Sunday dinners. Nothing fancy, meatloaf, pasta, once even just sandwiches. The food didn't matter. It was the gathering. We laughed. We played cards. Lily beat me at checkers and danced around the room. Ben asked me for stories about when Daddy was little, and I told him about the time Matthew tried to flush his goldfish down the toilet to give it an adventure. Matthew groaned. You promised you'd never tell. The kids giggled uncontrollably. I lived for those moments. But time, as it always does, kept moving. One morning in early autumn, I woke with a sharp pain in my chest. Not crushing, but tight like someone had tied a knot inside me. I waited for it to pass. It didn't. I drove myself to the hospital. Tests. Scans. IVs. Your heart's tired, the doctor said gently. Age. Where? Family history. You've done well for a long time, but we'll need to monitor things carefully from now on. I nodded, trying to absorb it. How long? He didn't answer directly, just said, Let's focus on quality now. I thought of Lily's bracelets, Ben's robot drawings, Emily's laughter, Matthew's hand squeezing mine on the porch. I thought, I want more time. Not years. Moments. I told them later that week. Sat them all down at my house. Tried to smile, but my voice wavered. It's manageable, I said. I'm not going anywhere yet. Matthew looked like he'd swallowed gravel. Ben said, Are you going to be okay, Grandpa? I took his small hand in mine. As long as I have you guys around, I will be. Lily crawled into my lap. We can make you a magic potion. Emily rubbed my back. Matthew didn't speak much. Just stayed late after the kids went to bed and asked the doctor's name, the dosage of my meds, and what he could do. I'm scared, he admitted. So was I said, when your mom got sick. But this time, I'm not alone. He nodded, tears silently slipping down. After that, they visited more. They brought food, organized my pills, helped mow the lawn. But they also brought joy, games, movies, photos. One evening, as we watched an old home video together, Matthew's 6th birthday, Eleanor laughing, me wearing a paper crown, Lily turned and asked, Who filmed this? Your grandma, I said. She was funny. She really was. Matthew reached over and held my hand. She'd love this, he whispered. I think she's here, I whispered back. In November, we had a small Thanksgiving. Just the 5 of us. I made a toast. To second chances, I said, and to showing up when it matters. Matthew clinked his glass to mine, and to fathers who never stopped writing letters. I smiled, even when they were never answered. As the year wound down, I started writing again. Not letters. Not to Matthew. To the kids. Little notes. Stories. Life advice. Recipes. Silly jokes. I slipped them into envelopes labeled, To read when you're 10. Open when you graduate. For your wedding day. If you ever feel alone. I wasn't preparing to leave. I was preparing to stay, just in a different way. One quiet December morning, snow falling like feathers, Matthew found me sitting on the porch with a blanket. You okay? He asked. I smiled. Better than okay. He sat next to me. You know, he said, I used to think the letter I sent you, the one saying not to come to the reunion, that was the last word between us. It almost was, I replied. He shook his head. But you replied with just one word. Noted. He laughed softly. That word haunted me. And now I think. It saved us. I looked at him, the man he'd become. Strong. Soft. Forged through pain and grace. It did, I said. Because sometimes, all a door needs is a knock. That winter, I got sicker. There were more hospital visits. More slow days. But there was never a day I didn't see them. They kept coming. And I kept loving them with everything I had left. One day, I couldn't make it out of bed. The house was quiet. Snow tapped on the windows. Matthew sat beside me. The kids climbed up, curled close. Emily held my hand. Grandpa, Ben whispered. Are you dreaming? I looked at him, eyes misty. Always. What are you dreaming about? A house full of noise. A family. Forgiveness. Joy. You. Lily leaned down and kissed my cheek. We'll be okay, Grandpa. I know, sweetheart. When the time came in, it came gently. Like everything else, Matthew found a box in my attic. Inside were hundreds of letters, most addressed to him. He read them all. And he cried. And he laughed. And he forgave again. At the memorial, Matthew stood and read one aloud. His voice broke twice, but he didn't stop. My dear Matthew, I don't know when you'll read this. Maybe never. But I'll keep writing, because that's what love does. It speaks, even in silence. It hopes, even in stillness. And it waits, even in pain. If you ever come back to me, know this. You were never gone from my heart. He folded the paper slowly. I used to think he never understood me, he said. But he understood everything. He was just waiting for me to see it. Afterwards, Lily slipped a note into the casket. It read, Dear Grandpa, we'll keep writing too.